Hey team, welcome back to the show. Today it is Coach Andrea and I. It is good to be back. It has been a few weeks. And we are talking about how to keep your results after your photo shoot prep. So, wrapping up the photo shoot prep series, I'm excited to get into this one. Really going to just be talking through what to expect after the photo shoot prep, talk you through what you need to be ready for mentally and physically once that prep is over, and ensure you're able to keep the majority of your results rather than rebounding, regaining all the body fat that you lost. So obviously, the episode is very targeted towards those who have just completed a photo shoot, but it can also really be applicable to someone who just finished a fat loss phase and pushed to get leaner than they have in the past. But before we get into it, Andrea, anything new going on with you this week that you want to fill us in on?
We haven't podcasted in a couple weeks since before the meetup, and all of us have just been dying from the flu in the meantime. So there hasn't been a ton going on. I took a week off from training and then just kind of still slowly easing into it because Tuesday was my first day back. Today is going to be my second day back. Today's going to be a little bit harder of a session, so I'm still just going to take it easy so that I'm not just like completely debilitated tomorrow with soreness.
Yeah.
But that's it. I've dropped a couple pounds each of the last 2 weeks. So I think part of that was just the sickness because no training. I also had no appetite, so I was still hitting my macros, but it was with like rice cakes and stuff that was a lot
Right.
lower fiber, lower volume. So now I've kind of held through this week, but I'm down to like 149, and last time we podcasted I was probably like 154, so I've dropped quite a
Damn.
bit within that time.
Yeah, you come down a lot. Okay. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I feel like mine's pretty similar. As everyone
Yeah.
could probably still hear my voice. I'm sorry about that. A lot better than it's been for like the last week though. But yeah, for what I think we're almost 2 weeks in now to basically this influenza thing. So yeah, last mine, I know yours started like Saturday. Mine didn't start till
Yeah.
Tuesday. I just started to feel like shit. And then, yeah, the last, like all last week, I just wasn't able to train. I haven't been like this sick or for this long in quite a
Yeah.
while, honestly. So yeah, the whole team has been down pretty bad, but we're coming back now. So yeah, I mean, I've been in my mini cut as well. So what, the first week, okay, so I'm 2.5 weeks in now. um, I'm down 12 pounds so far. So been losing pretty quickly. First week we were down like 5 pounds. And I mean, you expect to lose like some muscle glycogen, gut content, etc. So that's not excessively fast for that first week. Second week, start of the second week. I mean, I check in on Wednesdays. I started my diet on Monday, so that was like 10 days in. I had like just started to get sick the previous day, so I told Steve like about filled him in on that situation, and he had told me to okay, well let's refeed 1 to 3 days. Go based on your preference. I'm at 21 to 2200. We were gonna bring calories up to 29 to 3000. Um, and I ended up again getting a lot more sick than like when I checked in with him, it was Wednesday, and I was like, yeah, I think I'm getting better. And then it ended up, yeah, getting way worse, and I had to skip the rest of that week of training. So I ended up taking 3 refeed days last week, and I still lost 6 pounds last week. Um, so I lost a lot more last week. So again, we're down. It's slowed down a little bit over the last couple of days. We're down 12 pounds so far. Um, which I wouldn't recommend anyone like lose at that quick of a rate for multiple weeks. I
Yeah,
mean,
not the best way to do it.
it's been surprising. It's also a funny thing because, like, yes, there's less training related inflammation, which will cause like a little bit more, like my weight to be a little bit higher. My glycogen stores still are going to be a little bit more depleted still due to just not training and pulling muscle glycogen into those tissues, but it is still down quite a bit more than I would expect. So I don't know. I am still surprised at how much like weight actually came down. So he has me like I refeeding 2 days again this week. And again, last couple days it does seem to have slowed. I'm at 220 232.8 as of this morning. I think I started
Mhm.
at like 232.4. So we're down a good bit, but yeah, that's really where we're at currently.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see over the next couple weeks how things are going for us after these big drops.
I know. I'm curious to see if my weight like comes back up at all.
Yeah,
I don't know. Anyways, that is what's going on my end. Are you ready to get into the topic?
ready.
All right. So again, we are going to be talking through how to manage the next few months after the photo shoot prep. Really, like from where people typically struggle, this period after the prep can often be just as difficult as the diet itself. I know a lot of people have come from a background of, for example, like maybe I've worked with a decent amount of clients or talked with a decent amount of clients who joined the team who have done like a bikini show in the past that gotten on stage and then they don't have any structure afterwards. Maybe their coach is just working with them up until their show, and then they rapidly regain the weight afterwards. It's really one of the easiest times to like quickly regain body weight if you don't manage the process well. So today's episode really is going to teach you how to avoid that, maintain a good physique in a healthy way, and keep progressing. I know like after my first photo shoot, I mean, there's a couple different ways you can go about this. Like I had chatted with one of our clients, Jen, who worked with Natalie for a very long time. They did their photo shoot together. They crushed it. When we were at our client meetup, we had a coffee with a few clients. We were chatting about like her post photo shoot experience here versus she had hopped on stage previously as well, and she got leaner this time around. They crushed it. It was really cool to see how much better of a result they brought than when she'd gotten on stage previously. But I know for her, like after her first hopping on stage with her prior coach, and they had just she didn't work with the coach, like it was done when she got on stage. After that, she had mentioned like really there's just no structure, and I just felt like I regained it so quickly. Which again, if you're coming from a place where you're very dieted down, if you're below a sustainable level of body fat, your body probably does want to regain some body fat back for health. That can be like a very hard thing to manage. But on the flip side, you can also go the other direction. Like I know after the first photo shoot that I did, I was like so scared to let go of that I tried to stay lean for too long and I felt like shit for a very long time because of that. So really managing it well in either case is important and making sure that we're still prioritizing your health. Anything to add there before we continue?
Yeah, I think, and we'll talk about this, but it all comes down to, like the title of the episode is keeping your results, but a lot of that comes down to how how lean have you gotten and what are going to be the consequences of trying to stay that lean. But regardless of how lean you get, you don't have to like gain 20 pounds right away and balloon back up to a place that you're not comfortable in. So really like there might be a situation where you can't stay as lean as you have gotten to, but you can always get back to a place where you feel really good and you're productive in building some more muscle. And that's going
Yeah.
to kind of be the focus.
Yeah, I think on the flip side, when we talk about like, hey, some people do need to regain body fat back, can also kind of be easy to use that as a cop out to just do what I want after the phase.
Mhm.
And a lot of times you might not need to gain back as much body fat, or you might not need to actually gain back any. It's really is for someone who's gotten very, very lean, where that becomes a lot more important. But it's just important to kind of know where that line actually is.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So to go ahead and get into it, all right, so let's get into how to manage the post photo shoot prep phase. So, first question or thing to understand is whether everyone should try to maintain the same level of leanness they achieved for the photo shoot. And no, probably not. We do need a certain level of body fat for health. And if you're below this body fat floor, we will need to come back up to it in order to feel your best, in order to productively build muscle below this certain threshold. Again, a lot of your hormones are tied to the amount of body fat you have on your frame. Especially for women, this floor below which we can maintain a healthy physique, feel good, maintain healthy hormones is going to be higher than it will for a male. Largely even tied to like you need a certain amount of body fat for your body to sense that it's safe to reproduce. So below that point, it wouldn't make sense for our sex hormones to be in a good position for you to reproduce, right? So there will be a lot of things tied to that. So some individuals may need to regain some body fat, But again, it's important to know that not everyone here will need to regain post shoot. So I think it's important to talk through. Andrea, break down signs a client might actually need to regain body fat after a photo shoot.
Yeah, the way that your body's going to communicate this to you is through your biofeedback. So we can of course get lab work, but right after a photo shoot or show or anything where you're getting really really lean, the lab work is not like lab work is going to reflect that you've just been dieting pretty hard. So regardless, that's going to be thrown off for the first several weeks. But you can look to your biofeedback, and that should be starting to improve afterwards. So disrupted biofeedback would look like a missing cycle or an irregular cycle. So if if it's missing or irregular, that's a really good sign that you might be below that floor where your body feels comfortable and is healthy. Poor sleep is another big one. This one, I think, just making sure that you're not taking in too much caffeine. As the diet gets a little more aggressive, that can become like a vicious cycle where you're dragging, so you have like an afternoon pick me up with caffeine, and then your sleep is disrupted. And so make sure that you're not in that cycle before you assume this is due to being too lean. But if you really have been doing everything like quote unquote right, and your sleep is still really really poor, that's probably a sign that your progesterone is low. Or maybe you're just waking up hungry. Those are both really good signs that you're below that floor that you need to be at for body fat.
Yeah.
Did you want to jump in there?
Nope.
Okay. Excessive hunger is another one. Now, hunger is super normal, and the leaner you are, you're just going to have some hunger, and that's fine. But if it's like true, like gnawing stomach hunger constantly, you probably just need to gain a little bit of body fat, because hunger is really tied in with leptin hormones and ghrelin hormones. And leptin is something that is found in the body fat. And so if you don't have enough body fat, that's just going to be something that doesn't go away regardless of the amount of food in your stomach. And then we want to make sure that we're recovering from sessions in the gym. So we need to make sure that like your soreness isn't excessive. You're actually getting a good pump and disruption in the gym. And then the last one I would say here is having to keep your calories excessively low. So that number is going to be different for everybody, obviously, but kind of like where you've been, what your maintenance is. If you're having to keep your calories really, really low to stay at that body fat percentage, it's probably not going to be productive for building more muscle in another phase. And so we would need to be able to get that up to where you can recover and start building muscle.
Yeah. I would say like especially when we're talking about regaining body fat, I think the most or like does someone the ones that stand out the most there are typically you're extremely low energy. And again, and we're doing things as best we possibly can, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
it's not like that I'm low energy because I manage caffeine very poorly and thus my sleep quality sucks. And I'm doing a good job, like eating plenty of food earlier in the day. Like I'm spacing my food well. I'm not in the situation where I'm like trying to hoard all my calories for the end of the day. And then it's just like a lot of flexible dieting. Like we're doing a good job with our food quality, our micronutrient intake, and keeping our training reasonable, not like overdoing the volume, overdoing the movement, and still like my energy is really poor. Oftentimes hand in hand with this, yes, will be like a missing or consistent menstrual cycle, and then the hunger. Sometimes there's no hunger at all there, but typically in this instance, like post shoot especially, there would be quite a lot of hunger, and that's again that it's not a. It's actually like when you pause and examine what does this hunger feel like in my stomach, you can really feel like wow, there's yes that like gnawing hunger in my stomach. It's not just like a habit, like oh, I'm out for dinner and I'm suddenly like just so hungry because, which again, it might be more like habit based than an actual like true need to eat. So those are typically, I would say, some of the biggest markers I'm looking at there. Now from a nutritional approach, Talked a lot about reverse dieting in the past. I'll link up a few notes in the episodes that kind of talk through the X's and O's of that. Here, I want to focus on rather than like, here's how to set up a reverse diet. Again, we've just talked about that so much that there are other episodes that can really guide you that, well, check out the show notes. I want to focus on the most common mistakes to avoid or unique approaches we would use in this phase versus others. Food selection here is a really, really big one. A big mistake a lot of people make when the photo shoot prep, when the diet phase is done, is just drastically changing their food sources, right? Here, I've missed this food, I've missed this food, I've missed this food. Not that there's not room to work those things in, but we primarily want to focus on eating the similar foods as before, just in larger quantities. Because again, a lot of people will have a lot more hunger at this time. With the first like month or two, really, I would say like the first month is typically going to be when it's the highest post diet. But also, we don't have that goal of getting leaner anymore. So we're in a place where it's a little bit harder to accept hunger than it typically would be. But it's like, but I'm pushing for this goal, I'm grinding for this goal. When, okay, the fat loss phase is over, it's a lot harder to just like sit with and be okay with hunger. So it is very important from a food quality perspective to do what we can to mitigate that. So if we're completely changing our food sources for like all these like hyper palatable, much less filling foods just because we have a few more calories to work with, it can be easy to be less satiated from your diet than you were before. So I would really again try to maintain similar foods to before, just in larger quantities. There is room for some flexibility here, but you don't want to drastically change that up. Anything else you would add on the food selection side?
Well, yeah, like you said, the mental piece of it is so huge because you don't have that goal any longer. And I would also just expect for this to be a difficult time whenever it comes to hunger and cravings, and anything that you are including in your meal plan or in your day, you're going to crave more of that. So again, like you can definitely include more flexible foods here and have like something that you've been craving, but I would use like natural portion control. And what I mean
Yeah,
by that is don't get a gallon of ice cream and decide you're going to have a scoop. Go out for a scoop of ice cream. Have like little pre-packaged things rather than one big container. Those kind of things that are almost like a beginner's um like way that we would help them help a more beginner client in the start of a beginner fat loss phase. Use those kind of things here to prevent that overeating, because this is where you'll probably have the hardest time with those cravings.
that's a really good take. I would say in general, don't drastically change the foods that are available in your house, I think is a
Yeah.
good. And people, I don't know if we're as deep in this as we were. I feel like for a long time, there was like this idea put out there that you don't have a healthy relationship with food if you can't like have everything and like constantly available all the time. And like if you have to like, well, I just don't have that food in my house, like that's, I don't know. I really think that's just pretty normal. Like for
Yeah,
me.
that's just smart.
Right. Um, so, but I would say, especially in this instance, yeah, like, don't get a gallon of ice cream in your house if that's
Yeah.
going to be potentially a problem for you to resist. Just again, go out for a scoop of ice cream. Um, Another big mistake people make here is not establishing new goals, and this is just as much from a coaching front as the client perspective. But in this instance, now there are times where, hey, us just focusing on actually maintaining the progress that you made in certain situations, that can be a really good and worthy goal for a client to have. Not that it's not a worthy goal in general, but in a lot of instances, just trying to maintain is oftentimes a very boring goal for people, and just doesn't do a lot to motivate. So I really like, as we wrap up the fat loss phase, I like to give a person a week or two to chill. We're kind of probably deloading then, focusing on reducing a lot of stress, really recovering. And then we're working through, okay, over the next 6 to 12 months, what do you want to accomplish with your physique? Where do you want to be? What are our biggest priorities during this time from like life perspective, like where does your physique or continued progress fall into your bigger picture priorities? What muscle groups are the biggest priority to build during this time? Like, let's choose one to two that we do want to develop further. And again, really paint a picture of where you want your physique to be in a year. And then from there, typically, hey, we are going to change a good amount of variables with your training. And we're going to really like lay out, okay, here's what the path looks like to get there, right? Here's what our next 6 to 12 months look like. And we're adjusting our training, we're adjusting our nutrition, etc., based around that. And that really gives someone something new to push for, which I think for just people in general is very important. I know for me it is to like consistently have a goal on the horizon that we're working towards, because it can otherwise be like such a letdown, like, hey, I accomplished this thing and now what? Right? Where I was pushing so hard, it was so goal driven. Now, the goal shouldn't be like in this instance, the goal shouldn't be more fat loss, at least in the near future. But I think having something new to push for there is very helpful.
Yeah, this is kind of a fun time to set that up too because you're as lean as you've ever been. You can really see what your physique looks like stripped
Yeah.
of body fat, and you can see like, oh, I actually do want to build more glutes or quads or whatever the case is, because sometimes body fat can skew that and make it look different than what's actually happening.
Oh, for sure.
So yeah, so doing that now is fun because you can really see, um, you know, all right, so at this body fat now, next time I'm here, this is what I want to look different. And then next time you do get that lean, it really makes it clear how much muscle you've put on.
Yeah, no, I love this time because it's, yeah, as you said, we're so clear on, okay, let's reassess like what is the ultimate goal physique like? And we have a really good idea now. Where do we need to truly build more? And it might be, okay, so maybe we're going to spend a year focusing on building, like, yeah, maybe we lost, maybe your glutes, maybe we didn't have as much glute muscle tissue as we thought we did. There's a lot more body fat there than you may have thought. So we need to build there more. Let's spend a year focusing on really prioritizing and building this area. And let's do this process again. And let's see where we're at. Which can just be such a fun thing. Um, Another common mistake is expecting to look as lean as you did at the end of the shoot and or trying to hold on to that too tightly. Now, I think this is just important to understand in general. Like if your body fat, even if your body fat is the same, let's say you're a month out from your photo shoot now, even if you didn't gain a single ounce of body fat, you still won't look quite as lean as you did the end of the diet, the day of the shoot, because there's more food in your belly. It can also be hard if you do something, if you do a photo shoot specifically, it can also be hard not to compare yourself to how you looked in the pictures you get from the shoot, which is a funny thing. I remember going into my first photo shoot and I remember the day before being like, there's no way I'm ready. Like, I don't even like feel like I look like I have abs yet. And then seeing the pictures, and I was like, holy shit, that's what I looked like. I never once thought I looked like that in the mirror. But then going forward, every time I saw myself in the mirror, it was comparing to like how I looked in those pictures, which was never how I like thought I looked in the mirror before anyways. But it can create kind of like this funny mind game where it's very similar to like you're comparing yourself to like someone on an Instagram with like the lighting and the filters, etc. Like the photographers are literally taking thousands of pictures, choosing the best ones. Oftentimes they are like editing them to like not like photoshopping them to make your biceps look bigger, pull your waist in, but like am I changing like the colors and I don't really know what they do there honestly, but it will very much be like your the very very best angles, the few very best shots out of thousands, right?
Yeah.
So but it's easy to compare yourself to like those pictures when that's just not really reality either. um and also understanding here, like you don't need to get super fluffy post photo shoot, but if you are in that situation where you're so lean that we need to regain back some body fat for health, staying there will prevent you from making future physique progress, like I mentioned with my own, right? Or like I mean, even like from a client perspective, I can think of a lot of client examples. I've talked about Lexi on this podcast a lot. Like her health phase, we took her through where her initial goal was to build muscle, but She had just transitioned off of birth control. She didn't have a menstrual cycle. Her calories were very low. Her movement was super high. And we had to, in order for her to be able to productively build, she builds so much easier now, but we had to spend a lot of time focusing on a health phase, getting her cycle back, getting her hormones back to a healthy place before we were able to really productively build. And if this is your first time getting this lean and really successfully dieting, it can just be hard to let go of like seeing yourself at your leanest. Again, even if you don't gain any body fat, just having more food in your stomach consistently, you won't look as lean as you did. It's easy to compare yourself to like what those pictures look like. And it can be hard to just, I went through this whole process. It was kind of like this epic journey. And now I'm letting go of that. Now I'm losing that. When in reality, what you will see over time as you go through more and more of these phases that we take clients through is really when you're working with a coach, when we're doing things well, you're not going to be getting too terribly far from this point, right? Like that first fat loss phase, the first time you get there is always the hardest. After that, it's not a big deal, right? Now it's funny to me how much easier it is to like be okay with like, oh, I look a little bit fluffier now, right? Like again, I'm in my mini cut now and I'm down 12 pounds. I'm losing too quickly, but it's just over time, again, as we prioritize our health, building more muscle, getting back there is so much easier. So it's can be scary to think like, am I just going to go back to where I was before? And you won't, but it's still a very normal fear to have. Anything else to add on that front?
I also think it's just helpful to remember we're peaking you for this day. Like you said, there's lighting, there's angles, there's all of this stuff. We're making it so that, the bulk of food in your stomach is as little as possible. But if you were to go get on the hack squat in that moment, your performance would be nowhere near what it normally is. We're just
Right.
like not focused on that day, but then from then forward, that is the focus in order to put on more muscle and continue to shape your body. So it's just it's apples to oranges. It's completely different focus for that one day at that specific hour versus, like you said, even if you don't gain an ounce of body fat, you're just not going to be in that specific shape, but that's a good thing.
Yeah. Really, to progress your physique long term, we need a balance. If your goal is to be lean with a lot of muscle, there does need to be a balance of what our primary goal is, meaning a balance between the two goals of building muscle and getting leaner, right? There's a time where, hey, our primary goal can be getting leaner, looking our best, staying our leanest. And there needs to be a time where performance, I'm progressing my training. I really feel great going to the gym. I'm very well fueled, where that has to be the priority in order for you to keep building muscle, which ultimately will be the thing that allows you to keep progressing and changing your physique. Because again, like if you get to, let's say you did a photo shoot, you got to your leanest you've ever been, maybe next time you do that, you could get like 1 to 2% leaner, but there's a threshold of like how much lower you'll be able to push your body fat. And if you were, unless you were happy with the shape and the amount of muscle mass you had then, which the first photo shoot, most people are probably going to be, wow, there's a lot I can continue to improve and build on. Or the fifth, there's always more, right? We can always get more jacked and build more. But really, you adding muscle is going to be the biggest way to continue to change your physique from this point. So again, being okay with, I need to fuel myself well and do the things that are necessary to be able to like make that process productive is from here how you ultimately keep making the best progress. I guess the last point, I already kind of touched on this, but last mistake a lot of people make is not taking the time to ensure their health is in a great place before pushing hard again. Establishing new goals is important, but again, we want to make sure you are in a healthy place to push the stress load your body is under before we actually start like getting back into a building phase. So again, like the example I used with Lexi could carry over to if you're someone like, hey, maybe your cycle is inconsistent and you just wrapped up a process like this. Okay. Before we're actually going to be able to productively build, that's a pretty good sign your sex hormones aren't going to be in the best place. It would do in the long term, you will make so much more progress if you take the time to address that first before we just go all in on like a building phase. Because otherwise, be training hard, you're gonna be creating a lot of fatigue, might even gain a little bit more body fat, and we're not going to productively build that much muscle until we address that anyways. So making sure we address this first is very important. And there in instances like that, especially, um, really for anyone like this, where it's like, hey, biofeedback isn't the best after a phase like this, isn't this isn't very common. I would say more so if someone starts in this place due to like managing things poorly in the past versus when you're guided through this process well, like if we get shredded, there needs to be a recovery period, but it is not common that it's like there's XYZ thing we need to address now. Again, this is a lot more specific to like when someone starts coaching and have been under eating for way too long or something of the sort. We really would typically want to look at blood work and see what we can address there and make sure we're giving that adequate time before we push into that like building phase or whatever it is. Anything else you would add as far as like mistakes people make that I may have missed or anything else added to what I just chatted about there?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Cool. Okay. So from there, I mean, to kind of wrap things up, biggest things to focus on as far as managing this well post shoot. First, kind of assessing, are you in a place where you need to regain body fat or not? Making sure that we're doing a good job with food selection, establishing new goals, understanding that you might not look as lean as you did the day of the photo shoot, and that's okay. And making sure that we are prioritizing health and getting back to your healthiest before pushing too hard. And that is what we got for y'all as far as the photo shoot prep series goes. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If there are any future topics you want us to podcast on, feel free to shoot either Andrea or I a message on Instagram. If you enjoy the show, do us a huge favor, subscribe, leave a rating and review. If you want to apply for coaching, hit the link in the show notes to apply to work with our team. And we will catch you guys next time.